I need, no chase I need, no chase I need, no chase.
Was the CIA responsible for, in any way, shape, or form, funneling cocaine into the United States of America, helping to turn it into crack, and turning it into what is now devastated the majority of the inner cities of America? A lot of people say that this is just another bull case drawn up by black people who are just so paranoid to say that everything is a conspiracy. But today you're going to meet several people who are former employees of our United States government, people who have looked at this over years, who will say, whether it was a conspiracy or not, they don't want to talk about it. But did the CIA know that drugs were coming into the United States of America and help it get here? The answer to the question is yes.
Absolutely.
Does the CIA do this on a regular basis? The answer to the question is
absolutely. I wish I could take them to court.
And right now, just by virtue of the fact that Montel Williams is doing the show, someone is going to say, you see, it's another black journalist who is feeding into the conspiracy story. And most of you who know me know I'm probably one of the most conservative people in this country. I spent 20 years in the United States government working for the military. This show is about finding some truth and saying to the American people, let us get the answers that we demand, because it's our dollars that paid to bring coke to America. We'll be back right after this. Thank you so much for joining us today. You know, yesterday we were in San Diego, California, talking with one of the country's most notorious drug dealers, Mr. Ricky Ross, better known as Freeway Rick. Take a look at this tape.
I think I'm an expert on cocaine. It's not many people that has dealt with as much cocaine as I have. I think I'm an expert. I saw people strung out from snorting cocaine, where they snort cocaine all day long. I saw them take powder and put it in cigarettes and smoke it, just like a rock smoker will. And they'll smoke back to back to back.
Well, Ricky Ross is right now facing a life sentence, but he says he deserves to be a free man. Why? Because he says the CIA used him as a pawn to sell drugs to help fund the secret war in Nicaragua. Take a look at this tape.
If it was good for them to sell drugs, then it should have been good for me to sell drugs. The money from the drugs went to buy guns for the Contras.
And Ricky Ross is right now at the center of one of the country's biggest controversies when it comes to drugs. And I'm going to tell you something. If this controversy continues to escalate the way it has, and it will, I think this country is going to stop for a second and say it's wake-up call time. I think right now what we need to do is try to figure out whether or not there's any truth to this. So today we're going to discuss it. And my first guest worked for the government of the United States, for the Drug Enforcement Agency, for 25 years. He recently wrote a book called Triangle of Death, which he wrote and says it was written as fiction, because if you had written it as fact, well, please welcome Mr. Michael Levine to the show.
Look, I've put thousands of people in jail, thousands. DEA gave a British writer once a figure of 3,000. It was a lot more than that. I've never failed in putting a case before court, conspiracy cases, undercover cases. I've never lost a case. You know, in every one of these cases, what I'm talking about is I have a lot of credibility. I live by my credibility. So when I say I have personal testimony about Central Intelligence killing, murdering cases, one case, the biggest drug case I think in our history, Operation Trifecta, was a case where, posing as a mafia don, Luis Miguel Garcia, we went to Bolivia. We plugged into a pipeline of massive amounts of cocaine going from Bolivia through Mexico with the protection of the Mexican army into California. Both the CIA and the State Department and the Justice Department ganged up to kill that case.
To stop the case?
To murder that case. Absolutely.
Why?
Murder that case. Well, there's several reasons. First, all I can do is testify as I would in federal court as to what happened. I'm in Panama. We ordered 15 tons of cocaine to go through Mexico, be paid for in Panama, into the U.S. from Bolivia.
Stop there for a second, Michael. You're in Panama. You are a deep cover agent for the United States.
Suddenly, all logistics support is taken away.
But wait a second. But they told you, as a deep cover agent, to buy cocaine and send it through this country and bring it into the United States of America.
To catch, the cocaine was never intended to reach the U.S. It was going to be sold to undercover agents. The important thing to know is that we plugged into a pipeline that existed for years. Okay. And my DEA supervisor tells me, as an explanation, the CIA is in this in 4 countries. We're not telling you everything.
Okay, no, wait, I gotta hold you there for a second. I have to take a break. We're talking today, this is really a show about what we can call rumors. The rumor that the CIA was involved in making sure that cocaine made it to the streets of South Central LA back in the early 80s and then helped to develop and turn it into crack, which was then spread across America and is the reason why most of our inner cities are in the plight that they are in. And a lot of this has been out there for years, but it wasn't until recently that the story broke again. And my next guest is a reporter, not from San Diego, California, but from San Jose Mercury News, and he wrote a story called The Dark Alliance. Please welcome Mr. Gary Webb to the show. And Gary, this really, I think the current fervor over this issue is because of your article. A lot of people may not be familiar with what the Dark Alliance meant and stands for. Why don't you tell America what the story is about first, and then we'll talk about the issues.
It was about a cocaine ring that operated along the west coast of the United States throughout most of the 80s. And they were funneling, they were selling cocaine in South Central. They were also selling it in Oakland. They were selling it in San Francisco. They were selling it in San Jose. And some of the money they were making was going to support an army that the men who ran the cocaine ring worked for, called the FDN. This was an army that the CIA started in 1981 and supported.
Better known to us, most of us who remember news, the Contras in Nicaragua. So go right ahead.
The men that were running the cocaine ring were top officials of this Contra army. And what we found was that they were selling this stuff in South Central, which is, predominantly black section of Los Angeles, immediately before the outbreak of the crack cocaine epidemic. They started selling powder. Tons and tons and tons of powder cocaine was going into this one small area of the city. And from there, they sold it to Freeway Rick. And Freeway Rick took the powder, turned it into crack, and starting in 1983, 1984, began distributing it to predominantly the gangs, the Crips and the Bloods in Los Angeles, and they spread it, from there.
From there. Now, since this has happened, you have butted heads with everybody in Washington, D.C. trying to get information about the story. Have you not?
Yeah, we worked on this for a year, and it was only because, some people at National Archives believe freedom of information means freedom of information. We got some documents that showed that pretty strongly there were some CIA connections to this.
Let's talk a little bit about those documents for a second, because there's a gentleman, this figure that we talked about yesterday on the show. His name is Blandón. Danilo Blandón, who was a person who was a member of the aristocracy of Nicaragua before the fall of Somoza, and then he fled and comes to the United States and decides, while he's in the United States, so you can all understand this, he wants to raise money for the revolutionaries who are trying to overthrow the government that just overthrew them. So here in the United States, they try to do fundraisers, and that doesn't work, and then Blandón gets a scheme, well, I can get some cocaine cheaply with some help from some of my friends and get it into the United States of America. All I need to find is somebody who can sell it. So they find a gentleman by the name of Rick Ross, who is Freeway Rick. Rick Ross comes in and starts selling cocaine at the terms beginning 1 or 2 grams. And within weeks, 2, 3, 4 kilos a week. Within months, what was it, 10 to 15 kilos a day. Ricky Ross was selling cocaine to the point of making $3 to $4 million a day. He sold so much cocaine, it hurt his fingers to count the money. Not only in Los Angeles, but in Cincinnati, in St. Louis, all the way across America. So some can say, and this is the reason why people are so angry at you in your article, is that Ricky Ross, the dope dealer, was supplied by the CIA because Blandón was an operative for the CIA.
Message.
Yeah, I used to look around some more now. Look at that. I used to out now. And then he fled and comes to the United States and decides, while he's in the United States, so you can all understand this, he wants to raise money for the revolutionaries who are trying to overthrow the government that just overthrew them. So here in the United States, they try to do fundraisers, and that doesn't work. And then Blandón gets a scheme, well, I can get some cocaine cheaply with some help from some of my friends and get it into the United States of America. All I need to find is somebody who can sell it. So they find a gentleman by the name of Rick Ross, who is Freeway Rick. Rick Ross comes in and starts selling cocaine at the terms beginning 1 or 2 grams. And within weeks, 2, 3, 4 kilos a week. Within months, what was it, 10 to 15 kilos a day. Ricky Ross was selling cocaine to the point of making $3 to $4 million a day. He sold so much cocaine, it hurt his fingers to count the money. Not only in Los Angeles, but in Cincinnati, in St. Louis, all the way across America. So some can say, and this is the reason why people are so angry at you in your article, is that Ricky Ross, the dope dealer, was supplied by the CIA because Blandone was an operative for the CIA, correct?
Blandone and Meneses were working for an army that was a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA. They were meeting with CIA agents. Blandone, and this came out in court. I mean, Danilo Blandone is now a government witness. He works for the Drug Enforcement Administration. And we've paid him, I don't know, $166,000 over the last 18 months because he's such a good informant. So they put him on the witness stand in Ricky Ross's case. And he testified that in 1981, he went to Honduras. He met with the commander, the military commander of the CIA's army, and he was instructed to go raise money in California for this Contra army. And he was told that the ends justified the means.
And those ends being sell cocaine if you have to.
Well, look, he was in the room with the Nicaraguan representative of the Cali Cartel, Mr. Meneses, and he was in the room with a government marketing expert named Danilo Blandone. Now, if they weren't talking about selling cocaine, I don't know what they were talking about.
And this is all information they can find on the website. I have to use that website, but on the website on the internet. So we're going to put that up so people can go and
look at these documents.
Take a look at the documents yourself and judge it. But Michael, now I mean, there's a stretch here. Here's a guy who is obviously a CIA operative, Mr. Blandone, who is working with this government-backed army that we've kind of created in Nicaragua. But how the heck does this guy get to bring in tons of cocaine? When I say ton, I'm talking tons. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tons of cocaine weekly in the United States of America for 7 years, and no one can ever catch him. Right. Please welcome Mr. Joe Goulden to the show. And also welcome the host of his own radio talk show on WWRC in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Mr. Joe Madison to the show. I'll say Mr. Madison has dedicated the last 3 weeks of your broadcast?
Oh, no, it's been 7 weeks, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week.
To this issue?
To this issue. They will not allow me to talk about anything else. When I say they, I mean the people in this 50,000-watt station from Philadelphia to the hills of West Virginia, black, white, Hispanic, every color you can imagine, every nationality, every economic, social group. People want to know. America wants to know.
Mr. Goulden, you say that this is really out to lunch, right?
Montel, this is journalistic malpractice of the grossest sort. And we need an investigation of this, not where the CIA was in the drug business. That's been investigated ad infinitum. But why a supposedly respectable newspaper group, such as the Night Rooter newspapers, would publish ill-sourced, contradictory stories that rely more upon innuendo and misinformation than fact.
Okay, well now when we talk about misinformation and innuendo, here's something Mike has right there. Mike, you have a document that I saw on a recent show, but this document is a transcript of Oliver North's diary, correct?
I can go on for the next 2 hours.
Oh, wait,
Incidents where the CIA, and I put thousands of people away in jail, Mr. Goulden.
Mike, we're not arguing that.
We're a lot less.
Mike,
a lot
listen to me.
A lot less than you see. This is Oliver North.
Mike, that's great. That came out in the 1980s when they had 3 congressional committees, a special counsel, Lawrence
The only
Wall.
trouble with that was this was not given to Kerry. This was held back from Kerry.
And Walsh never investigated this.
And nobody has ever denied that people on the fringe of the Contra movement were involved in drug use.
Just so we know,
This man is claimed as this was a CIA plot. So now he's backed away from his claim. He tells the Washington Post incredibly, I didn't say CIA was doing this.
You know, one of the things
the man doesn't have a confidence in his own conviction.
they knew it. Here's the accusation. The accusation isn't that agents were on the street corner selling drugs. The accusation is that drugs are being sold by the Contras and that the CIA knew about it and didn't do anything. That's the accusation. So what we need is a Records Act so that you and I and all of us. Now, if he says he knows what the CIA knows, he's saying more than the CIA is saying.
General, I know this for a fact. They put Eden Pastora out of business in the Southern Front. Commandante Zero, for instance. Alan Fears, who ran the Central American Task Force, testified to the Kerry Committee. Yes, there were people involved in the Contra movement who were doing drugs. But
that's what we said.
Well, yeah, but you have your time long.
The question is,
Move this man!
That's what we said.
Well, yeah, but you have your time long.
The question is, does the CIA know?
We have Ricky Ross here, started in the drug business in 1979 when Blandone was still in Managua. I talked to Adolfo Calera from Managua at length last week.
Another
he says,
CIA
I've never
operative.
seen these guys.
investigation.
He ran the thing.
Okay, well,
Yeah, we got a
hold on.
picture of
Hold
him
on a
meeting with
second.
the drug dealer.
Let's stop for just a second. All the people of this country are asking for is let's investigate this. And the reason
Investigate it, that's
why
all.
is because for things like what Mike's been trying to show. Mike, if I could do it real quick, this is just an excerpt from Ollie North's diary where he says particularly about talking to this same person that Mike just said, that Mr. Golden said he talked to last week, Mr. Calero, the same person you talked to last week. It says in Ollie North's diary, contact him so we can get 1,500 kilos?
Well, in this, and mind you, there were 2 attempts at classifying this. In this, they reflect 1 aircraft to pick up 1,500 kilos. Now, I promise every one of you, if I, as a DEA agent, got this in your diary, you would have 100 DEA agents around you, around the clock. And this is 1 page of several hundred.
Well,
They've never been
kilos of what?
investigated.
Let me
Kilos
take,
of
Well, you tell me what.
let me take a break.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Let me take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Congressman Charles Rangel. But what we're talking about here is that there is at least information that alludes to the fact that over an 8-year period of time, from 1982 until about 1988, there is a person who is a known paid informant for the CIA who is funneling drugs to a crack dealer, dope dealer in Los Angeles. This is the part that's a known fact for most of the information. This person was known to be a CIA operative. He is the person providing cocaine. Tons of cocaine that's coming into the United States under protection. No one ever busts him. His partner is the biggest drug dealer in Central America, a guy by the name of Meneses, who obviously is supplying to him. Everybody completely looks the wrong way. For 8 years, this gentleman, Ricky Ross, is able to sell his drugs with the assistance of this guy, Blandone, selling drugs all over the place, never gets busted. He goes to jail, is in jail, a month away from getting out of jail. The CIA or the DEA sets up an elaborate sting to bust him as soon as he walks out of jail. He's in jail, not selling any drugs. They set up a sting, bust him. Ricky Ross is now back in jail waiting sentencing for another bust that took place after he got out of jail the first time. So the question is, was the CIA, did they just turn their backs and allow drugs to come into America? If they did that, are they then not responsible for the epidemic of crack in America? That's the next conclusion that some people say. Well, other people may say no. The ends justify the means. If this was the only way we could pay for an army to fight overseas, that's the way we do it. But do we do that at the cost of American citizens? Congressman Rangel, what do you think?
I think that Congresswoman Maxine Waters and commentator Joe Madison, and of course my old buddy Mike and Webb here, will be able to say as a legacy that they're leaving to their children that at long last someone pulled the reins in on the CIA. We are not just talking about whether or not they devastated communities throughout these United States. We're just saying that the CIA has been and is now completely out of control. And I don't understand, Montel, as to why all of America isn't completely outraged. You cannot target a black community with cocaine, with crack cocaine, any more than you could with poison gas without it destroying America. And as far as I'm concerned, the CIA is being charged with mass murder. And it's time for this allegation to be exposed, and it should not take 60 days to do it.
Mr. Golden, what do you say to this?
I think Charlie's jumping to conclusions here. We had 3 congressional committees look at this in depth in the 1980s. A special counsel, they found there was some stuff on the fringes of it. This is a germ of truth in Webb's fantasy articles here.
Move this man.
Germ of truth in Webb's fantasy articles here.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Golden? Did we not just have 2 congressional committees look into the Persian Gulf syndrome and come back and say we had nothing to do with the fact that our soldiers and sailors are sick? Now, last week, they just came back and said, oh, by the way, we did give them a pill. And, oh, by the way, when we did bomb that thing, they probably got some nerve gas. And, oh, by the way, we may be responsible for the injuries of thousands of Americans.
What Charlie Rangel is doing and Joe Madison here are taking allegations, very flimsy allegations. If anybody sits down and look at the analysis we've done, and the Washington Post himself, which is not a CIA defender, tore this thing apart on evidentiary grounds. Blandon, Ricky, wait. Ricky was already in the dope business while Blandon was still in Monaco.
How do you explain Blandon's testimony under oath as a government witness that he was selling cocaine for the Contras and that the CIA was in charge of it? How do you explain that?
That's not in his testimony. That's
it is.
unfortunate.
It's in the grand jury transcript.
I shared one of the...
It's posted on the internet so anybody in the world can read it.
I wish they would. This is what got me right by the police.
Hold on, listen. Now we're getting closer to agreement. Some of the people that were legally taking guns over there were involved in narcotics. That's agreed to. Let's say something else. Colonel North knew that some of these people were involved in drug smuggling.
And may have made
Would you
money.
say that?
And may have made money.
Let me make another.
Once you start agreeing to all of these things, then comes the question where we were stonewalled. They said, prove that the CIA knew it.
Wait. I've got to make another point that keeps getting mistaken here. You see, the committees did not investigate whether the CIA condoned drug trafficking. They did not investigate that. So that's what we need to get clear.
And let me take a break. I'll let you, as soon as you come back, I'll put you right in. But the other point they're making is back 2.5 years ago, I did a show about the Persian Gulf War Syndrome. And everybody said, Montel, you're out to lunch. You're crazy. Why are you telling people in America that we have to be worried about some disease? These sailors are all stupid. They're all crazy. All the Army guys are crazy. It's all made up. Now, 2 weeks ago, Congress investigates and all of a sudden, we did some stuff wrong. And now we're going to start paying. So we'll find out about this. We'll take a break. Yes, ma'am, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just more or less had a comment more so than a question. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time. What is the surprise now? The black race has always said we don't have the money nor the means. And it's always been, I've heard this since I was a child. And now all of a sudden it's a big surprise. Right. It's always been, we've always felt that way.
It's not a surprise. You know, we don't grow cocaine in the ghettos of America. It's got to come from somewhere. And the only thing that I will ask is that my good friend Charlie Rango here, if he will go back and help get legislation started that will create a Records Act. Once we create a Records Act, then we can all see what's there, classified or otherwise, and make up our own minds, black or white.
Okay, Michael, I got to let you go ahead.
I was hired by the government as a tactician. Right now, what we're succumbing to is what Central Intelligence wants. We're making it a black issue.
And it's not.
And it's not. My brother died. My son died. There's millions of Americans who suffered. The important thing that we've got to remember is that it is not a black issue, and the proof that they're waiting for it to go away is that both presidential candidates are not saying a word.
And I can tell you, Montel, that my audience is much like your audience. It's across the board. I mean, I read in this AIM, Accuracy in Media, where they claim that this is a Get Whitey campaign. Well, let me tell you something. There are black, white, Hispanic dealers, black, white, Hispanic distributors, black, white, Hispanic users, and the CIA, I assume, is not all white. So, you know, this is an American tragedy. It's not a get white tragedy. It's to get who's responsible and hold them accountable.
Okay, hold on just a second, Michael. Please welcome our next guest for the show. He served as a special counsel to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations in 1989. Please welcome Mr. Jack Blum to the show. Jack, near the end of the segment, I'm going to let you in as soon as we come back. What do you think about all this? Real quick, and I'll get you some more from you when I come back from break.
We've been there and we've done that. We did this investigation. We did it 10 years ago. We had witnesses under oath. We can say for a fact that Contras dealt cocaine, that the secret war in Nicaragua created conditions that opened the door to a flood of cocaine in America. And we know that the CIA and Oliver North and people in the White House knew about that.
And we also
said it in a public report.
I'm getting DEA agents, I'm telling you. I had a call last week from an agent who said, Montel, I will give you the location of the airfields they flew into. One of them is in Texas at a U.S. Army Air Force, or U.S. Air Force base. So why can't we go after these guys? Because that means that it wasn't just Reagan and Ali, but it may have been Bush. And
you've got to bring them in under oath.
Just know about it. They actively destroyed cases. They actively put DEA agents' lives on the line to protect the drug flow. I was one of those.
Let me take a break, and I'm going to let everybody come in one at a time, and we'll try to get through the next one. We'll be back right after this.
It ain't new.
Michael, jump in.
1993, the Cold War is over. Central Intelligence is caught red-handed, smuggling a ton of cocaine from Venezuela, that bastion of communism, to the United States, red-handed. The head of DEA on 60 Minutes said there's no other way to describe it. Drug smuggling, felony drug smuggling. I went to California and spoke to the DEA agent directly involved, who told me that Central Intelligence came to her in Venezuela with what she described as a wacky, suspicious idea to smuggle a ton of cocaine, and she told them, don't do it. They did it anyway and were caught by customs. Specific people.
And they
no Cold War, no investigation.
Let me ask Jack, what happened when you did this report, which I've read, which was extensive? How did the press react when you put that out?
We were assaulted on all sides by the administration. Every time we had a day of hearings, every time we had a witness, the Reagan people came down on us like a ton of bricks. They said the witnesses were lying, they were drug dealers who were trying to get off, that we were in it for politics. And in a way, it's a wonderful thing to have this resurface in a context where we don't have the official establishment raining on it, so maybe now somebody will go back and read what we did.
But I think Mike is right. What will happen tomorrow is, since I'm the only show that's doing this, it'll be put off as being a black person feeding into the conspiracy. And I have one more point. The bottom line of this whole thing is Blandon, the gentleman that we are all talking about, who was just paid $166,000 by the CIA and DEA, it was DEA, is in Nicaragua hanging out at a ranch. And we all, for 9 years, tried to track this guy down for being one of the biggest cocaine dealers. He's at a ranch in Nicaragua, free man, walking free, and Ricky Ross is sitting in jail, and Blandon was his supplier. How does that happen in America? Tell me. Let me take a break. We'll be back right after that. Montel asked you to call, and we want hearings within a week.
Montel,
and you can call us so I can track how many people called. We'll get a call to 100,000 phone calls.
I trust
very serious problem.
I trust the American people.
Exactly.
I trust Montel Williams, and God bless you and Gary Webb for doing this show, because you've done something the New York Times won't do. The Washington Post does a little job to try to make black people look like they're paranoid.
And also
the reality is, the more informed we are, the freer we are. And that's the most important.
You know, we're almost out of time, so I would advise you to go out and read Triangle of Death by Mr. Michael Levine. Go and get it today if you want to know more information about what goes on deep inside the CIA. Let's stop hoodwinking the public. Let's just get the truth out there. Mr. Blum, you wanted to make a final comment.
Look, we've had all the investigations we need. We know what happened. The time has come to debate serious reform. There was a debate over intelligence reform that wound up with an addition of people and an addition of money. The time has come to take a look at what we're doing. The Cold War's over. Let's find some new solutions, maybe even a whole new agency. We don't have to dig through this anymore. We know what happened.
The only reason why I would advise us to dig through it is to make sure we find out who was culpable, Senator Rango.
The CIA should be proud to open up their records and let it all hang out. The President of the United States should be in a position to say, not on my watch do Americans break the law and sell poison to kill other Americans. And if nothing else, this show is doing that. Well,